Frogan has eaten her legal fund. We're going to get into it today on The Legal Mindset. We teach you to be your own judge. I'm Andrew Esquire, American attorney. So for those that have been following this case, we obviously have our defendant Frogan here, who is embroiled in a lawsuit over copyright infringement for the Hassan Piker content nuke. Now, also in that lawsuit were Caseytron and Denims, but of course, Caseytron, as we saw, stepped out.
As to the GoFundMe money, to the extent there are any remaining funds after I pay my attorney's fees, I have agreed to pay the remaining funds to the clients.
And Denims is ready to take this to trial, ready to take this all the way. But we've always been waiting on Frogan and what she's going to do. There was a lot of speculation about Frogan, thinking she might settle, much in the same way of Caseytron, while some were saying she was dedicated to fighting this to the end like Denims, that she was a true warrior. Well, we now have figured out exactly what's going to happen, and that is she is going to default on this case. And that's because today we have filed in the U.S. District Court, the Central District for California, we had filed a request for default judgment against defendant Morgan Kamal Majid. That is exactly Frogan in this case. So what is a motion for default judgment? That's a motion essentially saying, hey, they haven't responded. They've passed the deadlines. So now we're going to assume liability. So once this is accepted by the court and approved by the court, liability is completely on Frogan. She gives up the fair use defense. She can no longer argue the law. All of that is out. The only thing left after this is damages. So you can argue over damages. So she would have a chance to speak up and say, no, the damages aren't that much, or let's argue over the damages. But essentially the trial is over. It's done. She's lost after this point. So let's get through the facts to figure out exactly how bad this was and how much Frogan did not put up a fight. But before we move on, there's an important message I want you guys to hear. Recently, a jury ordered Meta and YouTube to pay millions for their role in designing and promoting addictive platforms. They knew their apps could contribute to anxiety, depression, and body image issues, but did not share those risks while prioritizing profits. The recent historic verdict underscores the consequences of those decisions. If you or your child spent years growing up on social media and experienced serious mental health struggles, you should hear this. Morgan & Morgan is stepping up to hold these platforms accountable for the harm they caused. You can use the link in my description or scan the QR code to take a short quiz to see if you qualify for a case. You may be entitled to a potential recovery of over $1,000. So here we have in the same motion filed saying plaintiff TED Entertainment hereby requests the clerk enter default in this matter against defendant Morgan Kamal Majid, PKA Frogan, on the grounds that the defendant has failed to appear or otherwise respond to the complaint within the time prescribed by the federal rules of procedure. Now understand, this is not asking much. All that would be required is a very simple filing. She could have told her lawyer, hey, I'm on a budget. Hey, I don't want to spend that much money. Hey, try to keep this to, just a one-pager, the bare bones. Let's just give a basic complaint response so we don't default. They could have kept that to a minimum amount. You can tell your lawyer, hey, keep this cheap, just the bare minimum. I want to delay this. I want to try to push this off. That's definitely something you could tell their lawyer, but they didn't even give that. And they've had almost a year at this point. So since August of last year. So this was filed, of course, June 19th of last year. July 17th of last year, Frogan got the complaint. And on August 5th of last year, they had a joint stipulation to extend her deadline from August to October and also give her time for these filings. Since then, they also engaged in settlement negotiations. Now, the counsel for both sides can't talk about the details of settlement negotiation. However, I would like to speculate here, if I may, and I would like to say that they probably did the bare minimum in negotiation to make it kick down the line, to just take this and extend this out as far as possible. Obviously, they didn't come up with an agreeable settlement. And I think during this period of time, Frogan was looking at Caseytron and her settlement. And she was thinking, hey, look, if I settle, I'm going to have to give all of my legal defense fund over to Ethan Klein. And instead of doing that, let me kick this down the can and use those funds for my Big Macs. Yes, the giant mountain of Big Macs that we can all see Frogan chowing down on. Let's use that for the Big Mac fund over this period of time. And as I whittle this down, we'll eventually just not ignore it, whatever else. And hey, maybe this will go away. And maybe she got advice that it'd be totally okay for her to just ignore this and default. Maybe she got somebody whispering in her ear, yeah, forget about it. He's not actually going to go after you, or it's going to look bad, or you're going to become some sort of sob story. Well, that's not the case. The court, of course, at this point had every right to enter into a default judgment, which is what they're requesting. So they informed them on April 20th that they intended to proceed with litigation, gave her 3 weeks, and their deadline to respond was May 11th. That did not come. That day came and gone. And now, boom, we're at default judgment territory. Now, how is this not a scam? Because if we look at her legal defense fund, her lawsuit defense fund on GiveSendGo, she raised almost $40,000, $38,756, including donations that were running up to this day. She was getting donations very, very recently that were coming into her fund. So she's still out there grifting for her legal defense, despite the fact that she hasn't really used this for legal defense. Really, there's been no filings on her part, significant filings, over almost a year. Since August of last year, she really hasn't done anything. So what's going on? Where did all this money go? Didn't she have to use that for legal funds? Well, I called this out last year, and I am proven absolutely right yet again that she tucked some weasel words in here so she didn't get hit with scamming or fraud allegations. So if we turn back to the actual language that she tucked into that GiveSendGo legal defense fund, you can see it says here, this fundraiser is to cover any and all legal fees associated with his complaint, talking about Ethan Klein. Any counterclaims I may have against him, well, she can't file any counterclaims if she defaults. That's totally gone. So that's some BS to begin with. And then saying any other bills and personal expenses from lost wages and damages arising from this litigation. So her whole horse is going to be bet on personal expenses and bills. So she used this for rent. She used this once again for the Big Mac fund, chowing down on Cheetos, fried chicken, whatever else she did. But I mean, she was not using this for this fund. And because of that, she's able to say, hey, I didn't scam you because I put personal expenses in there. So you can't sue me. You guys can't come back and say I defrauded you because, hey, I disclosed this could be my personal expenses. So in judgment here, looking at this, I absolutely believe that she clearly used this for her personal expenses chiefly. Because she really didn't do anything in this lawsuit significantly. Her legal bills are probably no more than a couple $1,000s in this. Over totaling based on what she did. She really didn't have to spend more than that for what she's done so far. It really isn't that expensive to just go and have settlement negotiations, do some bare bones work, etc. And not even filing a response, a basic short 1-2 page response, something very simple, is absolutely disgraceful, having put up a legal defense fund, not even putting up a fight, not even taking this to summary judgment or a further stage where she could try to make an attempt to argue the law, try to do what Denham's did. She's not even gone as far as Denham's, right? Denham's at least shown, hey, she's willing to put up some level of fight in this. She hasn't even tried. Frogan has been sitting in her room, not doing anything with this. And if you look at the actual liability, it's going to be large. It's going to be over 200K. Likely the statutory damages alone are up to 150K, and that doesn't include any of Frogan's profits or any of Ethan's lost revenue. So if they're able to cobble together 50 or 100K of lost profits or Frogan's revenue, something like that, as well as attorney's fees, because Ethan can tack his attorney's fees onto this, that certainly is going to be expensive, because we all know that Ethan has the best lawyers on this that are very expensive. That's certainly going to get over 200K. So we're looking at a 6-figure amount. That's going to be a lot for Frogan, for someone who is constantly begging for money and saying she's broke. So what do I think her strategy is? I think it's to declare personal bankruptcy. I think her strategy all along has been to deplete these funds. So even if Ethan Klein wins, she can say, hey, that fund is empty. I already drained that fund. So you can't get anything from that. And I am personally broke. She will declare bankruptcy after the judgment. So, hey, you're not going to get anything from me. So I think that's her strategy. Now, that doesn't always work out. In some cases, there can still be liability attached. Now, that's going to be up for Ethan Klein to figure out that and fight that battle. But I think that's going to be her strategy in all of this. But without a doubt, we can say that Frogan ate it all. I want to know what you guys think in the comments below, and I will catch you on the next one.